Welcome to the BLTNT Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Loria, serving up real stories of business, life, technology, and transformations. You'll hear from interesting people about big changes from career shifts to life-altering decisions and the innovations that help make it all happen. It's about sharing those light bulb moments, pivot points, challenges overcome, and the journeys that inspire us to think differently. If you're on the lookout for insights to propel you forward, stories that resonate, or just a bit of inspiration on your next BLTNT move, you're in the right place. Let's dig in. All right, welcome to the BLTNT Podcast. I'm Matt Loria, and I am here with my guest, Ben Doornbos. I'm actually your guest in your own home here.
It's nice to be here, Matt. Thank you.
We're here at Nubs Nob in northern Michigan. We're doing the inaugural BLTNT Podcast Northern Michigan tour. So Ben, you're the first victim.
It's an honor.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So you're no stranger to doing podcasts. I've watched you, listened to you, adored. No, maybe not adored. But so you should be pretty comfortable doing this, right?
Yeah, I've done a few of these, and one of the things that I think is so cool about this medium is it allows us to get into a conversation and explain things a little bit better. Especially in the ski world, we'll do a lot of interviews with media, but they tend to be very short. And so this is kind of fun for me to be able to talk a little bit more about the philosophy of the ski area and our business. It's a great opportunity. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's what I've been hoping for. I mean, you and I have had probably hundreds of conversations that last under 5 minutes because they've been on a chairlift ride.
That's right. So
this is our chance to sit down and have it a little bit longer. So glad we're doing it. So Ben, you've got a really cool life. I think your life story is pretty neat, how you ended up here. Can you kind of explain, I guess maybe start off explaining what your job is here today, a little bit about your family and everything, but then let's kind of go back to the beginning and figure out how the heck you got here.
Sure. So my name's Ben Doornbos, and I'm the general manager of Nubs Nob ski area here in Harbor Springs, and I've had that title for 7 years, but I've been here since 2008, so I've been here for a while. And it's a wonderful place to work and wonderful people to work with. I'm very, very, very blessed. But the way I got here, I guess like every story, it's just not a straight line. But it basically started with...
you followed a girl here.
Well, there is that. There is that for sure. But I started as a college dropout, essentially, and left college because I was interested in hiking the Appalachian Trail. At age 19, I spent 6 months hiking, and then when I got back, I worked for a little while as a baker in a bakery and saved up enough money so I could take a trip down the Mississippi River, and I floated down the Mississippi River on basically a raft, modified pontoon boat with a friend of mine.
Did it have a motor?
It had a motor that worked sometimes.
Okay. And
we did that trip, and I was really into basically being a young person, outdoors, adventure, and I also realized after the end of those two trips that I probably did need to complete my education. So at 20 years old, I went to Northern Michigan University. I was able to get a degree in outdoor recreation and management. And then, yes, I did meet a girl there who married, and her family ties were to Petoskey.
Okay.
We worked running sailboats for a while, both in the Great Lakes and the Caribbean. And during the 2008 economic downturn, series of circumstances sent us back to Petoskey. And the only place I knew of in Petoskey was Nubs Nob, because I had skied here as a young man, and I applied for a job and was told it was too late in the season because it was late November. They called me back a week later, and I got a job working for, I think, $8.50 an hour in the rental department for the winter, and
Right.
That's led me to where I'm at today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You gave me a little bit of background on the when you were running the charter business. So that was in the Spanish Virgin Islands,
Mm-hmm.
and you were running some pretty nice equipment down there. And talk a little bit about that.
Well, post-college, sailing became a huge part of my life, and I loved everything about it. And once you get into that world, you meet a lot of people. And probably the coolest job I had was running a guy's 42-foot private sailboat. and we sailed it down from his home in Boston, myself and some friends, down to the Spanish Virgin Islands, Culebra, where he had a place down that way. And the fun thing for me was his wife hated to sail.
Okay.
So my whole job was to keep the boat nice with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and for his family. But then when they would show up, they would sail like for a couple hours, and then the guy's wife, the owner's wife, said, "Well, that's about enough for me." So the rest of the time we had to enjoy the boat for the two of us and explore the Virgin Islands, and we also ran private charters on the sailboat. And for a young man, that was kind of a awesome dream, and I'm lucky that I was able to do that.
That's great. That's great. You said that kind of, but those circumstances are what got you here. You had told me that all of a sudden one day that guy stopped answering his phone.
Well, yeah, he had created an index to the stock market, and that's how he had made his money, and I was working for him.
Okay.
And after a single season on the boat, he said, "This is really cool. I think we need to have a bigger boat. Maybe my wife would like that." And so he told me to pick out a 50-foot boat and kind of gave me a price range. We had the boat picked out. We were about to close the deal on it. And then, '08 happened. And he just stopped returning emails, stopped returning phone calls. And here I was at the end of my sailing season in Lake Superior, where we were living in northern Minnesota. And I had no job, and I had no idea what had happened to the job I did have. So that's why we ended up in Petoskey. Liz had a job working for her dad.
That's where you were coming back that winter. You were going to go back to the Virgin Islands. That didn't work out. Ended up back here then.
Yep, exactly. It was an accident.
There's a lot worse places you can end up. I can say that.
No, it was really fortunate. Very
That's
fortunate.
great. That's great. And I was joking with you. You have the most coveted job in northern Michigan. You're running one of the most unique. I don't know if we should call it boutique or how you might call Nubs Nob. One of the best ski areas in the state, in my belief. But it's kind of a niche, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're right. It's a real blessing to have this job and to work with the people I do and work with the owners that we have. This ski area has been owned by the Fisher family since 1977. One family has owned it, and they are the best type of owners you could possibly imagine. They're the kind of people who are not taking out of the business. They just constantly put in. And Elise, who I work for, she just has basically one question for me all the time: what can I do to help? And what do you think we need to do to make the ski area better? And to have a job like that and have that sort of a freedom, it's a unique thing. And you can feel it as a customer. I think you feel that somebody really cares about this place.
Yeah, I was mentioning to her, it feels like more of a stewardship than an ownership, right? That they're stewards of this place, or you're stewards of this place, maintaining kind of the special uniqueness of it, while still growing it appropriately. But it never feels like, it always feels like it's ours to share as a season pass holder. It doesn't feel like it's a company you're visiting. It feels like a home.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll write you the check after.
Okay, good. Yeah. You can slide me. We'll do cash on that is fine. But, you said, growing up though, grew up in Holland, Michigan. Your dad was a preacher. Because one of the things we had been talking about was, how does this guy who's got this background in, outdoor recreation, thrive so well in a leadership role? And, you had some really good foundational people that kind of helped form that for you. Can you talk about that and just share that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting, the crossovers between business and the church. And I was able to watch my dad twice in his lifetime take churches from under 100 members of the church to over 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was very good at growing churches, and he was very good at managing churches and the church culture. And I think I was picking up lessons from my dad throughout my life on how to do it. And I look at the problems that I have here running the ski area, and I can almost always relate to issues that my dad had to deal with at the church.
Yeah.
They too have physical expansions. They've got different ideas of what we should do next, and navigating all of that stuff can be difficult.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting too, the parallels of the cultural pieces and the things that the tenets that don't change, right? In a church, right? So the beliefs don't change, but obviously the way that you consume it changes, right? Whether that's an online type of thing or, growing to a satellite or something like that. And that kind of has the same overtures to what I see the way that you guys run Nubs Nob, right? Is there's a lot of things that stay the same, right? So you always feel like you're getting a similar experience when you come back each year, but things grow, but they really grow appropriately.
Yeah, I would also say that this place, like a church, people who have been skiing here for a long time, they feel as though it's theirs and that they own a piece of it, as do people who are members of a congregation. And when you change something, there's someone in the congregation that will be upset. And that's the same thing at the ski area. And I think when you have a brand that people, that they feel some ownership or some stock in, that they love, it's a wonderful thing. But you also are going to have people who are always going to say, hey, I don't understand why this anytime something moves at all.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and like the biggest movement we had here, obviously, was COVID, right? And I don't want to obviously talk too much about COVID because we have to move past that.
Yeah.
But the lessons that you learned and the wisdom that really came out of that and some trial and error and some speed to market or speed to make moves. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, that for me, as a young person in this role, working with this really incredible team we have here, the folks that have been at Nubs Nob have been here for years. And we really have this pretty awesome system here as a group of people where, this is how we do things. But then COVID happened and we were having to get our leadership team together at all these different department levels and rethink it because rules were being thrown at us. This is what you're allowed to do. This is how people can and cannot congregate. And all of those things made it so that we really had to be rethinking how we did things. We just couldn't do things how we had done them before. So it was a fun exercise that didn't, in retrospect, but at the time it didn't seem fun at all. But we had to say to ourselves, our business is about bringing people together. I mean, on a busy day here, we may have 4,000 people on property. And okay, how are we going to do that? And what is essential to make this thing run? And when we asked ourselves that question, there's a couple essential elements to running a ski area, and this one in particular. First one is snow. We don't have a business without snow. And so there's no problem with COVID with making snow and grooming snow and making sure that we had the best product possible. And then the second element to making this business work is the people, and that we have to treat people with kindness and respect and how they want to be treated, just like we've done throughout the history of Nubs Nob. And we knew that in all things, those 2 points had to be true. But the indoor dining was not a thing then. Going inside at all unmasked was not a thing. So we had to get super creative. And what we decided to do was we were going to remove all the tables and the chairs in the lodge. And we were going to put people counters on the outside the door so we knew how many people were in the lodge at one time. And we severely limited that. But what we didn't do was take away from the ski experience. We were like, we're going to be as friendly as possible. We're going to put more chairlift operators out there. We're going to put more people out there to help. And we're going to let people ski this winter. That we are going to make sure that skiing happens in northern Michigan. And we weren't going to throttle that back, but we did throttle back anything to do with indoors. And I was very proud that we had no transmission amongst our staff. I didn't have a single COVID incident amongst our 300 employees relating to Nubs Nob.
Wow.
And we also had no reported outbreaks amongst our guests. So that was a real win. But beyond that, what we hadn't understood was the fact that because the restaurants were shut down, the bowling alleys were shut down, and school sports were shut down, people didn't have a whole lot going on. And so they took up skiing, or they came back to skiing. It was kind of this beautiful moment for the ski industry where, what can you do during COVID times? Well, you can go outside. And what can you do in Michigan? Well, ski. ice fish, maybe snowmobile a little bit, but skiing was the big answer. And what we saw at that time was our business just went wild. And what we anticipated was, okay, after we get through this and school sports start back up, we're going to see a downturn again. This was a one-off, but it has not been that way. It's actually been quite the opposite, that each year builds upon itself, which I think speaks a lot to the experience that people have at Nubs Nob and other ski areas in the region, that it's a fun thing to do with your family.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think skiing too, it's got such a big hump to overcome to get out there the first time. And then once you do, it's a lot easier, right? So I know like you guys have put together I can't remember what it's called, but it's a learn to ski type of program.
Yeah, we put together this program last year called 2024 A Ski Odyssey, and now we're in 2025 A Ski Odyssey. And what it is, it's a learn to ski program, right? Skiing has one of the worst attrition rates of any sport. It's like, it's something ridiculous. Like if you've never skied and you just show up to a ski area,
Like
you
the
have
chances of coming back
the
is
chances
zero.
of coming back, it's actually like 5%.
Wow.
Like industry statistics, it's bad. The main reason, ski boots. You know,
Okay.
the main reason people don't come back is ski boots.
Okay.
Is like they put this thing on, they just say, I do not understand why anybody would be wearing these crazy moon shoes and all of this insane gear. And, you know, the idea we kind of latched onto is this feeling of being like an astronaut in space.
Okay.
With all of this, you feel like a fish out of water when you first put on ski gear. And so we said, let's embrace the silliness of this whole thing. And our marketing material was silly, with people skiing in astronaut suits and stuff like this. And we have a conveyor lift here that's got a tube on it, and it's got all these spacey lights, and we call it the space worm. So it played into our beginner slope. But the idea was we're going to spend time with folks, and we're going to make sure that the ski boots fit. Like if that's as far as we get in this lesson, so be it. But the lesson was $50, included the lesson, the rentals, the lift ticket, and you come back twice. And at the end of the second time, you have a card, and the instructor says, hey, I noticed you doing well in these areas. This is where you can work. And you could take that card and go to our ticket window and get a bargain pass for just $100 for the rest of the ski season.
Oh, cool.
And the other thing you could do is go to our local ski retailer, the Bahnhof, and they would give you $100 off a full ski package. Because the idea here was not just to have skiing be something you did, right? Like, we wanted people to say, I am a skier.
Yeah.
And that is how we think we're going to build the sport here at Nubs Nob, is not just somebody who, you know, skiing is something I do. We want you to say, no, I am a skier.
This is how I identify.
And so how do you go from being a person who, you know, has never done the sport to saying, this is me, I am a skier?
Yeah, I never thought about I always thought, you know, the barrier to entry is obviously the money,
Yeah.
right? The distance that you have to go, you got to go stay somewhere and everything. But then, you know, I never really thought about the parallel of, or not the parallel, but the tie-in to where COVID kind of inspired people to get out there and do
Mhm.
it. And, you know, you didn't have anything else to do. So you had money.
Yeah.
So you could go spend it. You didn't have anything else you could go do. You had the time.
Yeah.
So you go do it. And now this is kind of the build off of that to say, okay, this is something we learned about there, which is take away a couple of the barriers. And then you also said with the attrition rate being low, you got to get them to come back a couple times.
Yeah.
Right. You get used to it.
Yes.
Right. Get past that first big hump.
Right.
And that's what gets them to stay.
And we thought the season pass and the gear part of this beginner lesson was so essential, because anybody who self-identifies as a skier, they have two things. They have a season pass and they have ski equipment.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a daily ticket buyer who's renting, you are a person who goes skiing versus a person who says, I am a skier.
Got it.
And that's why we had that incorporation.
That's funny.
Yeah.
The part of your guys' success and business model, and maybe it's all over the industry. I don't know. You know the industry is the season pass, right? And it does so many things for the buyer and for the seller. Talk about that a little bit more, because you know I want people to understand kind of the essential nature of that and how it kind of binds the person to the organization.
Well, I appreciate you giving me a platform to rant here for a second, because if your listeners are not skiers, the storyline out there is the sport is being ruined by high-priced lift tickets. And it's true that some of the out west resorts are charging over $300 now for a daily lift ticket. And you look at that as a casual person and you just say, this is insane, and then you see the long lift lines at, the Vail resorts and some of the other big out west resorts. And you just say, why would anybody get into this? It's insanely expensive and the lines are just crazy. Well, the reverse side of that, and what I think is the actual truth right now in the ski industry is it's the worst time to be a person who just shows up at the ticket window on a Saturday, has no idea what's going on, and just says, here I am, here's my wallet. If you are interested in skiing right now in the market, you need to plan ahead. You absolutely have to plan ahead. But if you plan ahead, you have some of the best deals that have ever existed in the ski industry. The season pass ratio when I started this job was something on average in the industry was like 10 to 12 to 1, meaning like if you ski 10 to 12 times, you might be better off buying a daily lift ticket. But now industry average is more like 5 or 6 to 1. So really, if you're going to ski 5 or 6 times, you ought to buy a season pass. But if you don't, yeah, there's a penalty there. But I think it actually benefits ski areas, which benefits the skier, because we can plan on our revenue a little bit better when we're getting those season pass dollars early on. And the what we've seen too, last winter was the warmest winter on history for us here at Nubs Nob. But our rev wasn't so crazy up and down. And had that happened to us 20 years ago, you really would have an off season. So for the ski areas, it allows us to kind of plan our capital better. Now, it's true, too, you might not hit the major grand slams or home runs when you have tons of snow and everything's awesome. But to even out the business model, I think is a good thing for ski areas and ultimately for skiers. But I just want to flip that script a little bit for the people that are listening that are interested in getting into the sport, that don't show up to a ski area on a Saturday having not purchased at least a lift ticket ahead of time. Almost everywhere you save money by buying a ticket ahead of time. But better yet, if you're going to get into the sport, buy a season pass. And it doesn't have to be a season pass to Nubs Nob. There's a thing called the Indy Pass right now, which is less than $300, and it gets you access to like 200 plus ski areas in North America for $300, and you can visit these places 2 times. In Michigan alone, we have I think 7 or 8 really solid ski areas on that Indy Pass, including Nubs Nob. So this is a better deal than when I was a child growing up skiing, and we would do it's not a lot of money in pastoring, so we would find every way we could to get a deal. But this is a something that my dad, when I was a youngster, would have loved to have had.
Jumped right on.
Oh yeah, he would have been all about that.
Yeah, and I remember being a kid before we had a place in the area here, always doing the math, and it was that 10, 11, 12 days before you were going to get break even on a season pass, and now it's only 4, 5, 6, depending if it's a holiday or whatever. But it just makes total financial sense. I love the balance though, because remember, most of the people watching this podcast in particular are business leaders, typically mid-market business leaders are kind of our demographic that watches or listens to this podcast. And so I know they're listening from the perspective of the revenue model, right? And going, oh, okay, planned revenue. If we know going into a season what revenue is looking like, what sales are looking like, you can then make appropriate investment decisions. And this business is very capitally intensive here. I mean, I think you said that there's more money in the tools to run this place than the land is even worth.
Yeah. The stuff that sits on the land is worth more than the land.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wild.
Yeah.
And you just put a new chairlift in 2 years ago?
Last winter was our first year with a brand new chairlift.
Okay.
Yep. And very capital intensive project, but it was something that we felt like it was time to do. Yeah.
I like too some of the ways that I shouldn't say I like what COVID did. I like some of the things that have come out of it, and the planning and the thoughtfulness. Your own leadership there's some efficiencies. You said you really stepped it up. You grew as a leader during COVID, especially based on communication and the directness and the speed of communication. Can you talk about that and just share maybe a tool or two that you used, or just how you leveraged email differently, or how did you keep 300 people informed? And before you go on, let me say this. This location is in Harbor Springs, very small town. The rumor mill can run amok in Harbor Springs. It's a small town, right? It can do that in any small town. But you had to get ahead of messaging. You had to clearly articulate messages to 300 people that work here and all the constituents of the families that ski here. So kind of elaborate on some of that stuff.
It was wild. And during that time, I would be getting emails from customers about, the raw truth was we were sitting here in the fall, coming into that first year operating under COVID restrictions, not knowing fully if we actually were going to be allowed to.
So like November, December 2020.
Yes.
That was where you
2021, I believe. Yeah. We closed. Yeah. Anyways, but 2020 into 2021 ski
right,
season.
The 2020 to 2021 season. Yeah.
Yeah. We were coming into that ski season, and there was new restrictions coming out all the time, new guidelines. Things would look like they were going to progress, and then it would go the other way. So the truth was, we really didn't know what we were going to be allowed to do or not allowed to do. We thought the whole time that we had witnessed outdoor recreation was something that could happen. So we were pretty confident that we could do that. And at a certain point, because of, as you say, the rumor mill, so many questions from season pass holders, from staff people, and my own inability to sleep, it was, we as a group of people here need to just make our own decisions. It's time to take our fate in our hands, and let's make a plan, and let's plan on worst case scenario. And we wrote those things down, department by department, and how we were going to do it based on worst case scenarios. And once we had what we thought was a pretty good plan, we put out a series of videos, which was basically me walking around the ski area with a guy with a camera pointed at me, and I would just talk like, hey, when you park your car, this is what it's going to look like. You're not going to go in this store. You're going to go right to the lift. And here's how we're going to do these things. What do you do when you get hungry? What do you do when you have to use the bathroom? And we just addressed this in videos, and people loved it, And I think it also, I noticed that my inbox kind of stopped with all of the questions and, what's happening next. And it calmed down my staff. It calmed myself down. And that was critical. And, that was kind of, I guess, ski patrol language. You could say it was a triage type situation of how we were going to address these concerns. But moving forward now, out of those times and back into normal business operations, I have used that tool more. And I think that if you're talking to folks just like we're talking right now, and they can, if it's not scripted, if they can hear your thought process, I like to do videos on the chairlift where I'm just talking to folks about what we're seeing. And last winter, the truth was, hey, it's going to be warm during the holidays, and we'd like to be 100% open. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But here's what we are going to do. And I think that having confidence to speak in that tone and in that manner to people, they really appreciate. But I don't think that I was brave enough, or, and I think it's not just me, that this, you want to rely on this marketing and telling folks things are really great all the time. But what we found is you're getting better brand loyalty by just telling people what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, you were one of the influences to why we shifted to so much video in our organization. As I was watching these messages go out, I'm going, everybody's kept up to date. This is unbelievable, And so we invested in the video cameras and everything like that to be able to do more of it, and then eventually end up adding this podcast. But another Northern Michigan company, the Montai companies, I was there visiting one of the guys, and he wasn't there, and walked into one of the rooms, and I saw a video camera, and I said, hey, what do you guys, it was their administrative assistant was walking me around. So what are you guys doing with all this? She says, oh my gosh, it's a company-wide, we're totally embracing, just talking to people truthfully, more clearly, as much as we can. She shows me this book. It's called They Ask, You Answer. So I'm smiling as you're talking about this, because it's the same mantra, which is basically like, just tell people the straight truth, and good things come from it, right? And that's that transparency piece, versus otherwise you're going to be at the risk of, or at the mercy of, the rumor mill, right? Oh, Nubs Nob is shutting down, or did you hear that the chair is, whatever.
Yeah.
and you hear all this stuff, and it's like, and then like you said, who would have thought that byproduct of your inbox actually went down?
Yeah.
That's a great byproduct. That told you, I mean, that to me, that's telling you
it's working.
It's working, right? The people are listening. They got the information they needed. And then you look at your own revenues and your own ticket counts, and you go, and they're responding. They're actually listening, and they're still buying from me.
Well, and
as I tell them that.
From a revenue standpoint at that time too, that's when the season pass sales started coming in. I think people were wondering, should I put the money out there for a season pass? Because, for a family of 4, it can be a pretty big outlay of money to purchase that season pass. And they're looking for some assurance. There were other ski areas that had policies in place, like, if we can't do this, then we're going to refund X amount, and here's our, we said, no, let's just tell them the truth about what we know, what's going on. And of course, if we can't open at all, we're going to roll your pass over to next year. We're not going to just keep your money and charge you again. But
sure,
that was our only assurance. Everything else was, we're going to do the best we can, and here's what it is. And I think that it gives you more latitude as if your customer base feels like you're acting in their best interest.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and then especially when you say when your customer base already feels like they own a piece of it, you almost have to, right? Otherwise, you start to cannibalize. On that topic of communication, and leveraging video like you've been doing, when you guys put in the new chairlift, it was a year ago, right?
Yeah.
I remember a communication coming out that talked about, it was you on a video talking all about how the decision was made, bringing in a third party, doing things that small ski areas just, I wouldn't say that they normally do. Bringing in a consultancy to do that, which I know you had mentioned that you met them through the association, the National Ski Area Association. But the fact that it was so well thought out and then communicated to, again, avoid that whole rumor mill that we've talked about. Can you just kind of talk about that and how, I don't know if you want to use the word freeing or what words you want to use towards it, but it was like, to me, it was just like pitch perfect. And I'm not just blowing sunshine at you here. It was like, it was spot on.
Yeah. Let me kind of tell the story from the beginning. Most ski areas in North America that have been around for a while kind of developed in the 1970s. And at that time, people were putting in fixed grip chairlifts. And a fixed grip chairlift means the chair stays affixed to the cable or the wire rope overhead, and it moves at a slower speed. Now, a high-speed chairlift has fewer chairs on the line, but it moves at a faster pace. Mm-hmm. High-speed chairlift costs 4 or 5x what fixed grip chairlift costs, but the technology continues to get better. And these chairlifts, they get a skier up the hill theoretically faster than a fixed grip lift.
Well, I think you also said, though, that in the 70s, they were throwing, it was just throw as many lifts as you could wherever you could. It wasn't planned out.
So
either.
That was the philosophy at ski areas in general in like the 70s, 80s, was put up as many chairlifts as you can because it suspends people in the air. It also, if a chairlift breaks down, and at that time the machinery wasn't as reliable, hey, we got a spare right next door.
Gotcha.
So, you look at older ski areas and they tend to have a lot of fixed grip lifts on property. It was time for us to replace our green chairlift. The company no longer exists. The parts had become hard to find, and we had some capital at that time. We said, what a good use of that would be is let's put in a brand new chairlift. It's been many years since we've put in a brand new chairlift. Let's do it. And it was going to be our main chairlift, the one at the front door, and huge capital outlay, bigger than we've done in many years. So we had to ask ourselves, what are we going to do? And when the word gets out that we're considering replacing our main chairlift, everybody
Here
said,
come the questions, right?
yeah, here come the questions. Well, it's going to be high speed, right?
Right.
Because that's what you do. You buy the most modern equipment. It gets a skier up the run slightly faster, and it seemed like that was the thing to do. We wanted to take time to really think about this, though, and what we ended up doing to really do our homework was bring in a group called the SE Group. They're a ski area consulting firm, and this group, I actually knew the owner of the SE Group, became a friend of mine through my work on the NSAA board. So I talked to him about this conundrum. He said, "Let's look at it." And they came out here, met with myself, Elise, and our leadership team. I said, "Hey, this ski area, most ski areas, what we're going to tell you is let's get rid of a few of these old chairlifts, not just one, but maybe 2 or 3, and then we're going to put a high-speed chairlift right here, right at your front door." And generally speaking, that is his advice, and that's what they would tell a ski area to do. They came here, they looked at skier flow, they looked at our traffic, they looked at our elevation and how long the chairlift ride currently was, and they said that would be a mistake. And that resonated with kind of with my heart and where I was at too. But they said, listen, if we do that, you're going to take your skier traffic. It's all going to go to this chairlift. It won't be distributed throughout the different faces of our ski area. We've got really kind of 3 different faces, and everybody's going to come here. This thing's going to act as a magnet, and all of your skiers are going to show up right here. And so the first thing you would see at Nubs Nob when you pull in on a busy day is a 15-minute line for this chairlift, right? But keeping it as a fixed grip, quote, old school lift with modern technology driving this thing now, a cleaner drive, more efficiency, and it runs. It's like 30 to 40 seconds faster to the top of the hill, and I could get into that if you want. But what we've done is we've kept the skier distribution the same, and we've also kept some of that old school vibe of the place. And frankly, the time savings was not much. The other thing that we would have to do from a business perspective is we'd have to hire another mechanic to service this thing all the time. And the not only the upfront cost so much more, but the maintenance cost is 10x a year on a high speed.
So many moving parts on that.
And so we said to purchase this thing, to maintain it, and then, the skier distribution, this place that is so special to so many people, it would be a massive change and not altogether positive. So, had we not said anything about the decision, had we not put out a video, I think what would have happened, I know what would have happened, is people would assume, Nubs is just trying to save money. That's all it is. They don't want to spend the money on this thing. And yeah, okay, money's part of it.
Money's one of the elements, absolutely.
Money's part of it, but it wasn't the only thing. The main thing was, what's the right call for the skier? And we really felt, and I still strongly feel, that the right thing for the skier was this fixed grip chairlift that I adore this chairlift. It's wonderful. It's a smooth ride. The chairs are comfortable. It works, and it does the job. So I think, if you ever get into, if you're really curious, I did put out a video on this thing a few years ago.
I want to make sure that we link that video in our comments of this of the podcast here, so somebody can see it. Because to me, another business leader needs to see this and see where the transparency piece just kind of came alive. And again, one more incident where it just shut down all the rumor mill, shut down all those extra emails that you were going to get, and you were ahead of it. And every one of us, I can say from my own personal opinion, is I felt like I was brought into it. I was communicated with.
Yeah.
Nothing. I didn't have to have any side conversation on it.
Yeah.
And it felt right.
Well, we wanted the skier to feel like, hey, we know you care about this place. We do too. And we thought about this hard. And then we also checked our judgment with other people.
Called in an expert on top of it.
We called in an expert who, we know Nubs Nob really well. We didn't have to do that. But when I got to know Kent, I was like, this is a smart guy. Let me ask him the question. And then he actually did the work. He actually drew up heat maps of skier distribution and put it all in graphs. And I can really geek out on all that stuff. But and he went against the grain of his own typical recommendations. So
Yeah.
it was a super fun exercise for me. But once we had all of the information, it was important that it didn't just live in our own brain and in our computer. It was important to talk to the skier and say, hey, we know you care about this place. We do too. And this is why we're doing this.
I like we have one of our performance values at Oxium. It's called anticipate without assuming.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I really love about how you explained, is it Ken or Kent?
Kent.
Kent,
Yeah.
From SE Group, how actually went against his typical decision making. Because as I told you before, I love when I find out through whatever conversation that somebody's a thinker, and can admit being wrong about something. It's like, oh, I want a little piece of that. I want to talk to that person.
Yeah.
And so I probably had to feel pretty good with your judgment call on him too, right? Saying, hey, I like this guy.
Yeah.
I think he runs a nice business, and then bring him in, and then when he gives you that advice that's so thoughtful, it's really refreshing.
Yeah, it's really cool to have these connections and meet these people that are, like you say, thoughtful people.
Mm-hmm.
And he treated, when we were asking them the question, they had more questions for us. It wasn't just, hey, we're here to tell you what to do.
Sure.
And they spent all the time with my crew. In less time with me, they wanted to know what the mechanics said, what our area manager said, what our ownership thought. And, I think it's fun, right? And if nothing else, in terms of like consulting businesses and stuff, if nothing else, just taking time in a slow time of your business to just ask questions.
Yeah.
It's a fun exercise, and it's really fun when you're thinking about ski area management.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I love that all the people were involved in it too. So they felt like, your team was involved at the ground level too.
Oh gosh, yeah. This was going to be, had we gone with a high speed chairlift, or really the decision either way, it was so important to have buy-in from the very ground
100%.
level. So important.
That's
Yeah.
great. This episode of the BLTNT Podcast is sponsored by Oxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. And powered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network. There was something you had mentioned about your dad with the churches, and how taking these churches from 100 to 1,000. And we had talked about, you said, hey, this business model is really, if I focus first on the season pass holder, everything else kind of falls into line. And I can't remember if it was Simon Sinek or somebody you had mentioned, says, you get those 1,000 fans.
Yeah.
And really that's what you've done here. That's what you do when you model after and you say, hey, our primary focus is to serve the season pass holder. Good things come from that. Can you kind of talk about that and
yeah, I think
how that spread works and how it doesn't alienate other people as well, though, too.
Right. I think it's a popular idea in business, and other people have heard this probably before too. But there's this idea of the 1,000 true fans, that if you're going to run a successful business, forget about all the marketing and everything else you need to build it. Just find 1,000 people that really like your product and are going to tell somebody else about it. And Nubs has had that for years and for generations.
Mm-hmm.
But when we as a company are thinking about, who are we talking to us, it's that season pass holder. Because they're the ones that, when the slopes are green and the leaves are still on the trees, they're saying, yeah, I'm going to put the money down for a season pass. And we have something like an 80-85% retention rate. So if you've bought a season pass with us, you continue to do it. And it's not just year to year, it's generation to generation. We've got 3, 4, 5 generations of people who have skied at Nubs Nob.
Generations is good, because I think there's a 30-year wait list on the locker room.
It's long. It's very long. Yeah. But for us, when we're making decisions or we're going to do something different, for Elise and her family and our leadership team here, we ask ourselves, what does this mean for the season pass holder? And it was like when we joined the Indy Pass, the season pass we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
We were reluctant to join at first, and we were slow to join. Other ski areas had joined first because we didn't want to overwhelm the ski area with Indy Pass visitors,
Right.
and have it negatively affect our season pass holders who'd spent their hard-earned money to be here, and we felt like that was an important balance to strike. So in all things, for our business, I think we think, who are those true fans, and how are we going to continue to cater to those folks and make them feel that Nubs is a special place for them.
Well, I feel like, and too, with your true fans, the true fan is bringing, I mean, I know what we do. We have a bunch of kids, so our kids are always bringing friends, and then, their parents come, and so we're always saying, hey, where are you skiing? Oh, come ski at Nubs, come ski with us. Oh, I've never skied there before, right? And so we're part of your sales department, right? I mean, that's what your fans are doing.
Yeah, we spend all of our marketing dollars on snow guns here, and to get those true fans, we're like, the product is the actual snow, and we're like, well, let's make tons of snow, groom it to perfection if we can, and just make the ski experience as good as it possibly can. And then Matt is going to tell his buddies about it. So, our marketing budget is zero. It goes all to snowmaking, basically.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and let's talk about marketing on the tagline. Is it still first class friendly skiing?
Oh, you're a few taglines back.
Am I a few taglines
Yeah,
back?
we were first class and friendly for
Okay.
years, and then we were Midwest best snow
Okay.
for years. And currently,
I just thought those were multiple signs. I didn't know that the things
those are
changed.
signs that we just haven't updated yet. Is what's happened. And our latest one is where skiers go. That's what we're operating under right now.
Okay, great. Great.
And I love the where skiers go because it's very simple, and that's who we are, right? There are other ski resorts. We're a ski area. And as a ski area, our number one thing is, how is the skiing? And if you're a person who likes to ski, Nubs Nob is the place to be in the Midwest. And I feel confident saying that because it's where we put all of our time and energy, and where the folks that have been working here 20, 30 years, our lead groomer, Scott Guppy Kuntz, he's been running a groomer, since he was a late teenager, basically, and now he's in his 50s. And he's got to be one of the best operators out there. I mean, it's incredible what this person can do.
Yeah.
But as a skier, you notice those things. You notice the fact that these guys are grooming this thing to perfection. And when you ski, there's not a ridge line here or there. They take time to overlap their passes. This is like going to a good coffee house versus going to a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a person like myself who enjoys coffee, there is a huge difference.
Yes.
And that's who we are. And so if you like to ski, come to Nubs Nob. It's where skiers go. If you like white tablecloths and spas and hot tubs, you can go to a ski resort. But this is a ski area.
So I'm raising. We're on our second set of kids, as you know, and raising all sorts of ski snobs, right? And I think I told you that we call the little guys the Nub Snobs, because anytime we take them to another ski place, they complain about the snow.
Yeah.
So you're making more fans. I want to make sure that we talk about the leadership piece, because I think you're just such a phenomenal leader. I think that you have an air of patience to you, with an amazing patience that's coupled with a huge sense of urgency. If that makes sense, right? Very thoughtful in your leadership. During COVID, you said that you had some changes in the communication style and the emails that you were putting out. So I want to talk about that. I know I said I wasn't going to keep focusing on COVID, but so many of these learnings came out of it, and you're still doing these things today. This, just how you changed email correspondence, and any other leadership changes in yourself that occurred, during that time.
Well, I think during that time, changes were happening so fast, and we had a few missteps where I thought it was clear, or I thought I had communicated clearly, and there was a misunderstanding with the rental department or in the kitchen. And so what I started doing was every single Monday putting out a crew memo, and we continue that to this day, which is the week ahead, we have this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. And even though the head chef really doesn't care that a bunch of folks are coming to ski school from a Calvary Baptist church or something, he has that information now, and likewise, the ski school director has the information that we're going to host a big party for the local hospital back in the kitchen, and I think that helps everybody feel like they understand what's happening in this growing organization. And the other thing too is making sure that we're on the same page. I still wander around the ski area every day and try my best to talk to every single department head multiple times a day. But when you're growing, you've got different messages, and somebody pulls you sideways, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I told Chef Ralph this, and then Chef Ralph says, wait, you didn't say anything about this group that's coming. So I adopted this crew memo thing, which seems like basic stuff, and it is. But when we started doing it, I was amazed at how more aligned we've become as a ski area. And I see the department heads taking that memo every week and crossing things off on it that have already occurred, and we're moving on to the next thing. And during COVID, decisions had to be made. Like, there was a lot of matrix, like decision matrix, right? Like, hey,
If then.
yeah, I've got an employee who's calling in. He doesn't have COVID, but his sister does, and he was at her house last night. Now what? And okay, if this, then this. And so we had to come up with flow charts, and we had all of these things that every single department had these, because we've got over 300 employees here. I can't field every single call, so we actually had flow charts posted at the desk of every single department head so that they could start making these decisions of
Without having to call Ben.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'd still let me know, hey, this person's out because they're not sure if they have anything right now, or so it was a tense time. I don't even really like talking about it. Yeah. When I think about it, like, oh man, I feel my hair falling out of my head as I'm discussing this.
I know. Well, that's why I have my hat on today, because the shine
looks good.
Yeah, it looks. I like this. But culturally though, so I mean, those things have latched on culturally. They've kind of cemented in. That's part of your communication and leadership style now. Did you ever see the poster? It says the illusion of communication is that it actually occurred. Like when you say, "Hey, Chef Ralph thought he heard," you thought you told him, and he said, "I didn't hear that."
Yeah.
It looks like you're clearing some of that stuff up. Also onto culture. I mean, the culture here is very special. You've mentioned that the ownership. So we can kind of like to start at the level of where ownership, their culture and their style of treating this place like stewards as opposed to owners, right? It's almost like they have a responsibility to the land, very Yellowstone-esque,
Yeah.
You ripped?
Not going to the train station.
It starts there, right? And then it has this feeling of there's things that they're doing to you and the management team, and then there's things you're doing to the next level of leadership and to the people who are out there doing all the doing. And then that filters into the customers, and then even down to the kids. And we've talked about how that culture is so special, how it flows downhill. You like that?
Yeah.
To where this is a special place for kids to be able to be and to be kids. We talked about how when we were younger, I mean, here you were floating down the Mississippi on 2 tin cans and a board,
basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And and I was out in the middle of Lake St. Clair at 13 years old with a outboard and a screwdriver that both didn't work. And, can you talk about that, about how that starts at the top, and then, and you get where I'm going.
I do.
On the kids thing. But
as I'm listening to you talk about, the top down, philosophy of this place. And, there's a single word that comes to mind, which is care. You have people that care, and at the deepest level, it's like part of who they are the owners. This place is like, it's part of their story. Elise was born, up here and raised up here and raised on the slopes here. And I love hearing her stories of when she was a kid growing up here. So she, this place has been part of her family for years. And her dad, owned Nubs before her. So, and her brother and her sister, her mom, they still all have that sort of level of care.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see that in them, it just naturally rubs off on the rest of the management team. They make sure that people are treated well here too, and that comes down to compensation partially.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to make sure that they're on the high side of fair with all of their key positions, and that helps with the retention. But the number one thing is that those of us that have worked here for a number of years, we know that we're driving to work at a place where the ownership cares about it, and we do too.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that sort of a situation, you can't help but be successful, I think. And when all of your mid-level managers feel that way about the place, it goes down to the next level, into the next level, right down to the person, catching your chairlift, looking you in the eye and saying, "How are you doing today?"
Mm-hmm.
And
You think they ever get sick of that? Because, boy, they ask it of every single person, every single chair.
Every 6 seconds, that chair comes around. And we have a morning meeting every single day. Usually I'll do the morning meeting, or sometimes our area manager will do the morning meeting, Ryan Moore. And we actually have as a check that he or I need to make on the box as we send folks out to their lift assignment is, did you tell people to have a nice ride and smile? Did you make eye contact, smile, and say, have a nice ride? It's important to us, and we say not only is this a customer service issue, it's actually a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
If the lift operator is hands in pocket, head down, they're not getting information. They're not going to. That a person's not going to say, "Hey, I see a kid who was crying on that last run," or it seems like maybe somebody left a snowboard in the middle of a run. But if you make eye contact and say, "How you doing today?" "Hey, good. You know what I just saw on that last run?" And now, boom,
Right.
this conversation has started. And so I think it actually keeps the slope safer. But certainly it makes the skiers feel welcome to ski here. And those relationships are incredible. I mean, we've got lift operators who have been with us for 20 years, actually even more. And we're coming on Christmas now. Our skiers will actually, a lot of them will buy gifts for these people. They get to know their kids, and drop off a box of chocolates for the holidays.
My kids do. For Mr. Gary,
really,
they buy him a Christmas gift.
Yeah, at the top of the red lift.
Yep.
Mr. Casper. And so these relationships, it's a cool thing, and it's a special place. And you've got, in one word, care from the top level all the way down to the bottom. And that's how I judge a ski area. When I go ski somewhere else, is how are the lift operators doing? Yeah.
Well, we talked about it being a special place too, and kind of that joking around about, what I was able to get away with as a kid growing up on the lake, and, what you were able to do, and the freedoms that we had to grow. And you said, and that's what I love about Nubs, is that this is a place that you can't do this at every ski area, but you can kind of let the kids go.
Yeah, I think
I'm not sure we want to say that out loud.
No, we can. I think it's safe to do. Yeah, I've got 2 boys myself. My youngest is 9, and 2 years ago he got his wings here, which was when he was 7 years old. He was welcome to go ski on his own, and people knew him. But even if it wasn't my child, there's people here looking out for him.
Mm-hmm.
And we paint all of our chair lifts, have been painted for years, different colors. So kids can just say, "I'm going to just stay on the green lift," or
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back to the orange lift. Or mom can say, "We're going to meet back at the black lift at 2:00. Be at the black lift at 2:00. I don't care what you're doing before that."
Right.
But, so it's a really fun thing. We have a lot of customers actually come from like the St. Louis area, and it's an interesting demographic because right there you could actually probably drive to the Rocky Mountains almost
Mm-hmm.
as quickly as you could get to northern Michigan to Nubs Nob.
Sure.
And when I didn't have kids, I didn't understand why you would do that. We're below 500 feet of vertical, and
Right.
you could go up to the mountains and have this huge, beautiful mountain experience. But what I have learned is that the kid thing is so cool. That I'm not going to send my 9-year-old loose at Breckenridge.
Right.
But I sure am going to do it at Nubs Nob. And and he feels like he has this immense freedom
Sure.
that he wouldn't feel at these other ski areas where he really needs to stay with mom or dad when at that age. And at least for me, maybe other people have different levels of
Yeah.
comfort as a parent, but um, and then the parking's easier. Getting a lift ticket's way more affordable. The ski school is not only more affordable, but it's world class. We just won the best ski area in the Central Division, which is the Midwest. And I think that there's a lot of things that we can do as a Midwest ski area that we can compete in certain areas against some of the big guys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the culture, what do they say? Culture eats something for breakfast. I can't remember what that is, but
Strategy, culture.
culture eats strategy.
Yeah.
But one thing you said that I wanted to make sure I said out loud here was when you let your kids go here, it's not odd. It's culturally correct in the Nubs Nob cultural ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. Raising kids and maybe this is a little off color, but maybe in particular young men.
Mm-hmm.
I've read quite a bit about this. I think about it a lot too with my background in the outdoor recreation and how that's played such a role in my own life. But kids, they need this freedom. It's important that they test their own boundaries.
Sure.
And if they're not able to do that, there's all kinds of things that result negative things that can result.
Sure.
And for me, I think that's maybe the area of this business that I'm the most passionate about is watching these young kids grow up on these slopes. It's just super fun to see. And I've been here long enough where I've seen our state champion in slalom last year. His name's Gavin Galbraith, a wonderful kid, but I saw him as an elementary kid skiing here, and now he's a state champion.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents, he's one of 4 boys, and his parents have let him loose on these slopes as soon as he was able to. And it's really cool to see that sort of a thing, especially culturally right now in the moment we have where people are afraid to let their kids ride their bikes to school, and the play is very prescribed.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got travel soccer, and there's not the backyard football like when you and I were coming up as much. And I hope that the ski area can act as a remedy to some of that that's going on right now. And
there's a story I have from last weekend. I was here skiing, and I can't remember what I was doing. I was waiting for one of my kids or something. Anyway, I was stopped at the top of a hill, must have been looking down or something, and this 11, 12-year-old says to me, "You okay? Do you need anything?" And he wasn't being a smart aleck. And I said, "No, I'm good. I'm just waiting for my son." He's like, "Oh, okay. Just want to make sure you're okay." And I was like, that was the coolest thing that's ever came out of a 12-year-old's mouth. Like the fact that he was conscientious about another person. And again, it was just him and his buddy skiing. It wasn't like their dad wasn't there. They weren't showing off to anybody. It was like kind of the definition of integrity, right? What do you do when nobody's looking?
Yeah.
How do you behave when nobody's looking? And I'm like, man, that was a really cool thing. I wish I could have found that kid's dad and said, "Yeah, nice job, man."
For me, raising these 2 young boys is, what you want them to develop is good judgment, right?
Sure.
And how do you develop good judgment with no freedom? You can't.
Right.
We actually have to let these kids grow wings. And I think Nubs Nob can be a place for, I don't think I know because I've seen it, is a place where these kids can get their wings, go explore, make some mistakes, and learn and grow and do better. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. You're on the National Ski Area Association board, correct?
Yeah, the NSAA, which is the national organization that kind of organizes the ski areas in North America. It's our trade association.
Okay.
But they offer a lot of things, and if we ever need to organize national programs, the legal landscape changes all the time for ski areas. They also help set standards for operations. During COVID, they were the ones who were really advocating on our behalf of, hey, small ski areas, we think you can operate. Here's how you can do it. And we're going to come up with signage. We're going to come up with plans. And they had the whole, what they called pandemic playbook.
Okay.
And that was offered to ski areas at no charge. And the ski industry was so cool because of the NSAA, I think, during that time, because we have this national trade organization that was able to talk to all of us. And yeah, I'm on that board, which has been a real it's been a real pleasure.
I mean, it's a pretty big deal. There's only 3 or 4 members in the Midwest, right, that are welcomed into that group, correct?
Yeah, they have to have membership or representation on the board from every region. And the Midwest has 3 or 4 seats, and I'm part of on a 6-year term where I get to have one of those seats. And I'm sitting next to some of the largest names in the ski industry. People way high up at Vail, and I've become a friend of a guy who runs Snowbird.
Okay.
So it's for me, I cannot believe that I have this experience and that I'm lucky enough to do it. I just had a phone call to my office a few years back. The executive director of the NSA says, "Hey, we've got a Midwest board seat open, and we want you to sit on it." I was shocked, but I just said, "Yeah, I'd love to." Yeah, yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, it's pretty cool that you're able to put your influence into that as well. I mean, have you seen? Obviously, you've gotten a lot out of it. You said that.
Yeah.
What do you feel like you're pouring into that?
Well, I think that my job on that board is to stick up for small ski areas.
Okay.
And our needs are not the needs of Vail. There's things that overlap, but having a seat on that board, I just want to make sure that small ski areas are represented, that our needs are heard, and that the NSAA continues to provide value to us. And they do. That things like chairlift maintenance and mechanics is a real difficult thing. It's a very skilled and specific trade, being a chairlift mechanic. And they have provided tools to help with training of mechanics, bring new people up. And for us small ski areas, that's a big help. So that's kind of where I like to put my energy, is just making sure that the small guys are heard in the room.
Well, I always I always think too, I mean, that's so funny what a behind the scenes item that is. And I know from knowing some people in the ski industry, your commitment to safety is essentially off the charts. The inspectors kind of laugh, like when they have to come here, they know how well you guys are doing.
Yeah, I that's been something that we've inherited here. Jim Bartlett, who was the general manager before myself for many years, he preached safety, and he really put together a good program, an incredible program of safety at the ski area, high expectations. He's now an inspector for one of our insurance companies.
Okay.
And then Marty Moore, our longstanding area manager who just retired this year, he continued on with the tradition of, let's not just do it as good as the rest. Let's do it better. And the thing that keeps me up at night more than anything is the safety of our customers. And so if there's anything we can do to make the experience a little bit safer, we're gonna try to do it.
I talk about like the behind the scenes pieces, and you spend so much time and money there. Even the snowmaking is kind of a behind the scenes item when you think about other ways that people are promoting their ski areas. I think of the little things, and I always, when I'm explaining to people kind of the essence of Nubs Nob and how the little things, right? And I always have made this mention. I probably made this mention to you, is the wooden steps, between the cement patio and the wooden deck. I always notice that they're never quite chewed up, right? You could always leave them another year, right? They'd be fine another year. They're getting kicked with ski boots every year, so they're getting chewed up, but they're never at a place of complete wear. You go to other ski resorts and you see, that thing is all chunked out.
Yeah.
You think of it, I always think, man, this is something so simple. It's 5 boards. Why doesn't somebody replace those? You guys actually do. And those are those little things that I think, whether you're into construction like I am or not, or, into that sort of thing, even if you don't notice it exactly, you feel it. right? And the people are picking it up. So is that part of your DNA? Is that part of the, I mean, obviously it's part of the DNA of the organization here, but
Yeah.
like talk about that a little
I
bit.
would bring it right back to that same word of care. Basically, you've got ownership here, and the people that work here care about the place. And so, if we have something like step treads, the boards are getting wore out, there's going to be somebody here that notices it right away
Mhm.
and says something about it, and then we put it on the list of stuff we're going to do something about. Sometimes you have big things that you want to take care of, but you just don't have the capital
Yeah.
at that moment. But we are going to do that, and I think it's as simple as that. As you walk into a restaurant, and sometimes you can tell, go to the bathroom. Is this a place
yeah.
that people care about?
Yep.
And I think that at Nubs, you're going to find clean bathrooms, and you're going to find well-groomed slopes, and essentially, I believe that around every corner, you're going to find a person who cares about their job and they care about this place. And that really is a difference.
Yeah. Well, I think you can feel it. I mean, I think you're doing an amazing job. Let's wrap it up and talk a little bit about just personal for you. What do the next 5 years look like? Next 5 years for Nubs and next 5 years for the ski industry. You pick the order though.
Wow. Looking into the crystal ball, let's talk about the industry in general. Skiing is back. It had a renaissance, maybe 70s, 80s, 90s, and then it kind of plateaued. But what we're seeing on a national level is we had record-breaking skier visits nationally. Let's see, not this year, but the year before. Had the weather worked out, and if every region now is having good weather, our skier visits will be record-breaking. So skiing's back, and I think it's here to stay. So that's really cool, right? Because that gives ski areas, it gives Nubs Nob latitude to do stuff. We all of a sudden, if people are here buying the product, enjoying the place, we've got a little bit more capital where we can do some stuff. And what kind of stuff do we want to do? Snowmaking. It's always been the answer.
Not marketing?
I
thought you were going to say marketing for sure.
It's always been the answer at Nubs Nob. This past year we built 5 snow guns. We're going to continue to build more snow guns. We're going to continue to build that infrastructure, the pump system, the piping, all of the stuff you don't see, so that skiing continues to be a thing that can happen with shorter and shorter weather windows. We're going to continue to invest in snowmaking. That's the first thing. But then we're also going to say, what would make the ski experience better? And that question gets asked and answered every year. So I think over the next 5 years, I think we might see things like chairlift replacement. And I think you're going to see an increased emphasis on making that skier experience even better. Things like more programming. We see that a lot of families are responding well to our ski academies for their kids. And we're going to continue to build that whole ski experience. So that's the Nubs Nob. My personal life is completely intertwined with that mission. So I think that kind of answers that question. But I'm also at this really special place in life right now where my kids are home, and in 5 years, that won't be true of my oldest. He'll be just leaving the nest.
Yeah.
So personally, I'm lucky to work in the ski industry because it means sailing season is open for me to enjoy. And we've got some pretty big goals as a family to continue to sail and take our small cruising boat all over the Great Lakes. That's kind of my family's thing. And so I personally, aside from work, I think that's my goal. And then another thing I think that is going to be happening at Nubs Nob is we have this incredible team here. Cannot imagine a ski area running with a better team than what we have. Many of those team members are getting to the point where it's retirement time, And so that's a big thing here too, is bringing up the next generation, because these guys, if I were to not show up to work tomorrow, it won't matter. They've got this. But we need to make sure that those folks have a person behind them.
Sure.
And in many cases, that's true. In some, it's not totally apparent yet. And so that's really my job, is to make sure that the people question is answered. Yeah.
That's great. And I mean, and as I recall, I mean, that was well thought out and well planned, and a nice transition when that happened in your particular role. So there's more DNA of that, in the place that says, hey, we plan for the future too. So glad that's on your radar. We've had a great conversation. I think you're an amazing guy running an amazing business. So I appreciate you doing this with me, and hopefully we get a bunch more people out here learning how to ski with the Ski Odyssey 2025.
Yes, yeah. I'm gonna shameless plug because I got a microphone in front of me. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're thinking about getting into skiing, I would check out that Ski Odyssey program. I also think that Nubs Nob is a wonderful place to learn how to ski. Yeah, we have a free beginner area here. So our purple lift and our space worm are totally free. You don't even need to have a lift ticket. You just show up and go. And some of the other cool stuff about Nubs is this award-winning ski school we've got. And the thing that I think is so neat about skiing is ask yourself, what outdoor activity can you do with multiple generations? So my dad's still in good health, and he'll come up here and rides the chairlift with me and my 9-year-old and my 13-year-old son, and we ski for hours. And I'm like, there's really nothing, almost nothing else in my life that I can think of where that's the case. And we're all kind of at the same pace. And even if my 9-year-old wants to bomb a hill, which he does, we end up at the chairlift, relatively at the same time, and we were spending the day together outdoors. And those memories as a family, I think, are it's invaluable.
Yeah, priceless.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you used the microphone because I know you spent all your money on snowmaking, so you don't have any marketing money left. So we need to give you these opportunities to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. So, no, thanks for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It's been fun.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.